Codex is the most powerful agentic tool available today, but most people have barely scratched the surface. I spent the last month and hundreds of hours using it every single day, figuring out the best way to automate all aspects of my work. And in this video, I'm going to show you the 6 most important areas that you need to understand if you actually want to get value out of Codex. Because once you understand these, Codex stops feeling like a basic chatbot that can just write code and starts feeling like a system you can use to automate real work with. So the most important part when you're using a local agent, whether it's Codex or Cloud Code, is configuring your project correctly. Because if you don't configure your project correctly, not only is your agent going to get dumber and slower on tasks, it's going to forget what it did previously. And so when you open up a new task on a new day, it's not going to remember anything you've done. And the way that you fix it is actually really simple. You use agents.md files and what I like to think of as write files as your memory layer. So basically, all that means is getting the agent to write down notes as it's doing a task to a document, and then updating the agent's MD file to remember to read those documents the next time it does a task. And the reason that works is because agent MD files are always given to the model. So basically, it's something that it will never forget. So let's walk through an example. Maybe I'm asking Codex to help me out write a video outline. Now, creating a video might have a lot of different tasks, and maybe you have skills. So let's say I have a researcher skill that helps me research, what video concepts to come up with. I have a thumbnail skill, which is helping me create thumbnails. And maybe I even have a skill for how I wanted to write the YouTube videos. Now, a lot of times what you could do is you could come in and say, hey, Codex, please create me this video outline. But what I noticed, and what you'll notice, is a lot of the times it forgets what to do in a specific order. So what I can do, instead of it having to go through and me remembering, all I have to say is video guidelines.md. And inside of this guidelines, I can say super simply, step 1, read the researcher skill, analyze thumbnails, use the scripts skill. So now I have this video guideline as just a simple file. And essentially, with my agents.md file, I can just say, whenever I ask for a YouTube file, YouTube script, please read video guidelines. And now what it's going to do is it's going to first read this. It's going to understand, okay, I have asked for a YouTube script. It's going to come back, and then the agent's going to say, okay, great, that makes sense. Then it's going to go out, and it's going to read the video guidelines. But guess what? The video guideline is going to say, read the researcher skill, analyze the thumbnail, and use the script skill, right? So then the model's going to say, okay, great, I'm going to go do that. And then it's going to go do all these things. And then finally, when it's done, it's going to come back with all the information it needs, and it's going to create the YouTube video outline. And so this is important because you can apply this concept to any sort of task that you give it. You start with your base task, kind of get it to do some work. And as you notice that there's areas where you want it to fix itself, or there's a lot of like recurring work and you need it to follow a specific order, I create a markdown file and I say, okay, in this markdown file, make sure you follow this order. So in this case, it's, researcher skill, thumbnail skill, script skill. I'll save that onto the project folder, and I just update the agent's MD file to say, whenever I'm asking for this task, go read that file. And this creates a very simple but effective memory layer that allows the agents to, again, work across longer tasks, newer tasks, remembering the core details of the work that I want it to do. So how does that look like in Codex? So here I have a project for creating content, and I have, as you can see, a lot of subfolders, things for things like when I use Remotion, short form videos, YouTube research. But the key details is that I have a lot of subfiles and guidelines. And what I will ask Codex is here. So for example, this is a short form guidelines that I use. And I can go to my agents.md, and it has basically the operating memory of this folder. So I say, if you want to look at concepting, make sure you read this file. If I want to looking at scripting rules, make sure you read this. I can also give it a lot more instructions like how I want folder patterns. So leveraging the agent's MD file is extremely useful, especially if you're doing either long running tasks or you're doing like units of work. Queuing and steering are two very simple concepts that you need to understand when you're using Codex or any of these agent tools, because they let you do very important but different things. Queuing is when you want to send a message to the AI agent when it's running to do something at the end of the run. So let's say I want it to make sure that it finishes whatever it's doing and I want to send it a message. So this is really good as a fire and forget style approach. So if I'm going to say, hey, I want you to code me this project, and then after I want to say, okay, publish it to the App Store. I don't want to send it in the middle of it coding the project. I want it to send it at the end. I would use queuing. Steering, on the other hand, is when I want to send it in the middle. So let's say I ask a coding agent to make some changes and make the site blue. As it's running, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I actually forgot. In addition to making the site blue, I want you to make the font size 16 pixels. Or maybe I'm asking it a different example of, say, hey, please go do some research for me. Go find me some people that I need to talk to, and then give me the outputs. But maybe in the meanwhile, I say, actually, I also want you to notify my team on Slack. Steering lets you do that. So again, super simple to do this inside of Codex. I asked it here to research some news and draft me a document about it. But let's say I actually want it to talk about it in a pirate's accent. So I'll say, also, before you write the document, please speak like a pirate. So here I had the option to queue or steer. So queuing is what we'll do is it will write this document and then I would send this message to the model versus steering is I'm going to send it right away. So here I want to steer it right away before it creates the document versus if I wanted it to do something like also send this document to someone in my Gmail, I would use the queue. So very simple to use, but important nuance to know the difference between them because I use them quite interchangeably, especially when I'm working on a long project or a long task and it's doing something and I'm like, oh no, I forgot to ask it something. Here, I'm going to give it some context and I'm going to steer it towards the right output versus if I wanted it to do something at the very end, I'd say, okay, look, you're going to do all that stuff. I don't want to bother you as you're doing that. I'm going to queue it at the end. Now, this has to be probably the most powerful feature inside of Codex, which is goal mode. Now, goal mode is just something that's called a Ralph loop, which someone came up with. And essentially, it is a way for an agent to be able to do a goal that is very long term and very big. So you come up with it and you give it a very definitive goal and it will actually go in a loop until it does that thing for you. So first it's going to review what you asked it, then it's going to iterate a little bit, make sure that it knows what you're asking it for, then it's going to create a plan, and then it's going to act and test, and it's going to do that in a loop until it has proved the outcome. So if it's done in the sense that did it fulfill the criteria I gave it, it'll finish. If not, it will just go back and continue working. So now this is a recursive loop, meaning it will continue to run until it has hit a criteria. And the powerful part is you can do this directly inside of Codex. I can give it very generic goals and it will be able to do those tasks for me. So for example, let's say I wanted it to make me an app and publish it to the App Store. I would give it a very defined goal and saying, go research the top 50 productivity apps on the App Store, pick the best category for me to build my app in. Then I want you to build those apps. I want you to test them, and then I want you to publish it to the App Store for review. I can do that with goal mode probably in the next 2 to 3 months once the models get a little bit better. But to give you an idea, you could think of it as just telling a person what you want and having them do it. And the key part, though, is that it has a way to verify whether or not it's done the goal. So if you don't give it a verification criteria, you'll notice that goal mode sort of isn't useful. Doing this inside of Codex is extremely simple. All you have to do is type /goal and your prompt. So here I gave it, I would say maybe not that great of a goal. I said, make me a YouTube video that will get me 1 million views. And I have it in, if you remember the project before, my sort of YouTube project, I have it in there. So it'll have access to all those capabilities. It'll be able to leverage all of the knowledge I have in that folder and will continue to iterate on that goal until it can achieve it. Now here, this is a bit hard because it doesn't have a way to verify whether or not it got 1 million views. So I can send this goal and you'll notice that it'll probably get stuck. It won't be able to achieve the goal that I want because I did not give it a way to verify its criteria. So let's see what it does. It's going to go ahead and it's going to start on this. Um, I'm almost certain that it's not going to achieve this goal, but just to give you an idea, it has actually access to a lot of different tools behind the scenes. So it has the ability to create videos, it has the ability to create thumbnails. So it can do all of that. And what it's going to do is it's going to try its best to create the best possible YouTube video it can. And it's going to loop until it feels like it's gotten to the point that it can't do anything anymore and it's ready for me to review it. Also, when you send this goal, you should see this little note here. Now, I would recommend though, if you're looking at creating something like this, is don't just create the goal yourself. Instead, what you could do is you could go to Codex and ask it, create a goal that helps me achieve it. And more often than not, the model is going to be better than you at creating prompts. So instead of me saying, here's my goal, what I will ask it is, I will say, create a goal for yourself. And then it's going to go and it's going to understand that it can create goals. And so it's going to do some research and it's going to come back to me and it's going to have a significantly better defined goal than if I just sat there and I prompted it. And you'll kind of notice a lot of the times that when you're prompting a model, your prompts are usually not as well thought out as just having an agent build the prompt for you. And I've kind of really stopped over prompting the models, and instead I'll use voice dictation and give it like a really high level kind of overview of what I want, and then I'll let the model sort of create the prompts on its own. And if I'm going to take that, I could take that prompt and give it to another model. Now, subagents is something that a lot of people know about, but don't really know how to effectively utilize because subagents can help you parallelize work in a very massive way, letting you do 5 to 10x the output that you normally would be able to do. The concept is very simple. You have your main agent, and it's able to spawn clones of itself to direct specific tasks for. So I have this one here. If I give it a task of research 100 stocks, it can spread the work across different agents based on what it thinks is the best way. And this is very powerful because instead of it having to do each individual stock, for example, it can analyze all of them at once. So let's take a look at the example that I have here. I asked it here to create 5 subagents to research the options data for the top 5 stocks in its opinion. What it did is instead of saying, okay, I'm going to look through the first stock, the second stock, the third stock, it spun up sub agents. And I can see where are the agents that it spun up. It gives me these tabs that has Heisenberg, Pascal, Meitner, Meniscus, and Hubble. What does it look like? Well, Chat, the main agent, created a prompt for this sub agent, and it has access to, in the same project, all of the capabilities, all of the connectors, all of the knowledge that we previously set up in our project with our agents MD files and rules. So it's like a clone of itself. The difference is it has a specific task with clear context. It doesn't need to worry about anything else that is happening, and then it spun up this one. So it said for NVIDIA, find it for me. I think I closed one of the tabs, find it for BA, find it for ARM, and then find it for Hubble. So it did all of these tasks at the same time, got the answers. Right here, I can say spawned it here. There's also Pascal we missed for Coinbase. And then it checks the outputs of those agents, waits for them to run, and then it has an analysis. So this is, again, I think, the future of how agents will be working with other agents and how you'll be working with agents is they're going to use a lot of sub agents to coordinate a lot of work in parallel. And this uses a lot of compute because, again, you're having these things run at the same time. Very powerful, very simple to use. The only thing to note is it's only really useful if you need to parallelize tasks that don't have too much meaning between one another. Like this sub agent didn't really need to care about the output of that sub agent. And to do that, you should ask it to create sub agents for you because I noticed that if I just asked it to research the option data for the top 5 stocks, it wouldn't create those sub agents. But here I asked it to, and it did that for me. Very powerful. A lot of people, like I said, talk about this. They don't know the best way to use it. And in my opinion, it's for when you need to parallelize a lot of independent work in one go. You want to keep the main chat's context clear. Ask it, and it will do it for you. Automation within Codex is a very, very powerful way to get these agents to be working for you 24/7, no matter whether you're asleep, you're out getting coffee, you're at the gym. It lets you create workflows that basically can just run forever and let you achieve things that normally you wouldn't be able to because you'd have to sit there and prompt the model. And so what I have here is I have a for fun sort of hedge fund that I made. And so what this hedge fund does is it's connected to a bunch of different things in a project, and it has access to a bunch of tools and scripts, a bunch of skills like, accessing a paper trading account, researching. It does a lot of things behind the scenes. Now, the key differentiator here is that I have an automation, or I have multiple automations that can run for me on an interval. So, for example, if I have my hedge fund, what does a hedge fund do? Well, they have to look at markets, they have to look at a lot of different details, they have to check your position. To do that by yourself manually, you don't want to sit there and have to prompt it. So, what's better is the agent automatically runs by itself. So, what I have set up actually is a big project here with a lot of different instructions with like agents MD following my guidelines I mentioned earlier. I also have this automation. And so this automation, you can read here, has a lot of different rules and conditions. So I have this running weekdays at 5:30, but you can have as many automations running. And so example would be you could run this every 5 minutes if you wanted to, every 10 minutes, every hour. I gave it a set of rules, and just so you know, I didn't write this prompt. This was me asking Codex to build its own prompt where it will go do research, it'll check our positions, it'll determine whether or not it should log what its actions are first or to make a trade. It also waits sometimes if it's unsure of a trade for me to kind of respond to it. And it'll update the project itself based off of a bunch of different agents that it has. And so it does a lot. So this is a very powerful feature when you're using Codex for, again, having agents run on intervals. Instead of me sitting here and checking the markets myself or, checking the numbers, checking the news, I can just have Codex with an automation run in my project every day. So here, this one, for example, runs at 8:30, but you could have one that runs every hour if you really wanted to. I think the hedge fund example is a great one because it is something that you just need to run often, checking the numbers, checking the market, checking how your positions are because things can vary. It is a little bit different than call it an algo trader, which is this is not. This is just a for fun project. But you can sort of see how powerful automations are for creating autonomous, truly autonomous agents that can run by themselves. The last one is has to be the most powerful but most underutilized tool, which is browser use and computer use. So browser use lets Codex control a computer on your behalf. So here it's using the built-in browser and it is very powerful. So I actually gave it a prompt. I asked it to open a new tab and go to grok.com, and it's able to, because I'm signed in, leverage my existing account and click through and use the Grok API. You can also do this with ChatGPT or any site. So it will go ahead and go to the site and click through and use the site like a human would to be able to power its own answer. And so this is powerful because it lets you take advantage of the fact that Codex can become your everything app. You can open multiple tabs, you can have multiple browsers running for you in one single application. So you can connect Notion, you can connect Google Sheets, you can connect sites that maybe there is not an MCP connector for, all in a single spot. And it can do this behind the scenes. I can close this tab. I don't have to be monitoring my computer. I can set and forget, and Codex will able to use the browser like a human would. So that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I found that these are sort of the things that I keep coming back to when I'm using Codex in general, high level. If we were to summarize here, set up your project correctly with your agents file. Make sure that if you have repeatable tasks, that you ask the agent to write that down and then update the agent's MD so it knows to reference that. Using queuing and steering based on the sort of task that you want. So queuing at the end, steering in the middle. Chrome use, browser use, very powerful, especially when you could hook it up to things that normally this agent doesn't have access to. So if you wanted to, you could hook it up to another instance of a ChatGPT or a Grok in my example. And lastly, sub agents, when you want to parallelize massive amounts of work, make sure you ask it to spawn those sub agents for you. But if you like this video, please leave a comment and I'll see you in the next one.